Hey everyone, this is Jun,
And I'm Daniel,
and we are Korean.
American. Hey June,
Yeah.
are you still open to hosting poker night?
Yes, for a long time I was trying to host a poker night
Yeah,
or a blackjack night.
yeah,
Recently,
yeah,
I got more interested in playing blackjack,
yeah.
and so I have a whole like casino set up.
I know.
Yeah. But the only thing that was missing was a dealing shoe. So I recently ordered one from Amazon. It's coming. It's coming. It's gonna come by next week, hopefully.
June,
Yes.
the whole point of casino night,
Hmm.
other than to have fun, was to make sure you were immersed in American culture.
Yeah.
And Americans don't host like that. You don't need to get a dealing shoe for casino
I
night.
know it was for my own interest. It was not for hosting, but I know what you're talking
It's
about.
such a Korean
Yeah.
mindset of hosting.
Hosting people, letting people into your house is kind of a big deal in Korea. Like
Big deal.
you
Ha
have to
ha
be
ha.
like oh no pun intended. It is a big
I
deal.
bet you that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think hosting people into your house, it requires or you're expected to be well prepared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of time it involves you serving food and
Yeah.
beverages
Yeah.
and like cleaning up your house so that it looks perfect
Yeah.
and all that. But I learned from you, Daniel, that it's not a thing in the US.
No. Yeah. I want to talk about today hosting people
Hmm.
and the expectations and how
Yeah.
that differs from the US
Yeah.
and how, in my opinion, that leads to what in Korea is quite famous
Hmm.
for cafe culture
Yeah.
and why it's so different than the US. Yeah.
Mm.
So,
I also wanted to talk about the last time that I invited you and our acquaintances over to our house.
yes, that's a
Um,
great example.
it was like half Korean, half American, right?
Yeah.
And it was so funny because all the Koreans brought something with them, like a
Oh,
little present. And all the Americans came empty-handed.
oh, did I come Binson?
I think so.
Oh, that's so shameful. I should know better. Yeah.
Because first, before you mentioned this, we talked about this. I didn't know that it was so casual to come to other
Mm,
people's houses before.
yeah.
I have no feelings whatsoever. I didn't have any feelings back then, but
Yeah. But you noticed.
I did
Yeah.
notice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's always top of mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a couple funny stories to share too. Literally, our second day after we moved in to our apartment in Korea,
Hmm.
I randomly, this was so crazy. I heard a dad
Hmm.
outside of our apartment building talking to his daughter in English. And I was like, oh, I have to introduce myself.
Hmm.
So, first of all, this is just crazy. Turns out they were born the same year as me,
Hmm.
had kids very similar ages. But not only that, we grew up within 10 miles of each other.
Hmm.
So we grew up really close. And, our parents might even attend the same church together. So, you know, in Korea, randomly just running into someone like this similar to me,
Hmm.
crazy. Anyway, still one of my best friends in Korea today.
Hmm.
But the first thing we do, of course, like any good American, would be, hey, why don't you come over to our house?
Mm.
Right? We love to just, whatever, get to know you.
Yeah.
Such a common thing in the US.
Hmm.
And we didn't realize at the time, but this American friend, he's married to like a Korean,
Hmm.
right? So I think when they arrived the next day or whatever, just to like get a meal, we hadn't done any preparation, zero.
Hmm.
We didn't even order food,
Yeah.
clean up the thing, nothing.
Oh, big no.
No. And, they were like, she was like, oh, like, is today a good day still?
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, sure. Like, what do you want to eat? We'll order. They're like, oh,
You
what
haven't
should we eat?
prepared a full
We
course
didn't,
meal.
yeah, exactly. We didn't prepare a lick, nothing,
Yeah.
right? And I think I didn't even realize at the time that this was a faux pas.
Mhm.
It took me a few times, but yeah, another example, it was, I think, a few months after we had moved in, nearby, one of the nearby families invited us over to have a Halloween party for the kids.
Mhm.
And so we come over, right?
Mm.
I don't think we brought anything.
Oh no. Oh no.
And we walked into like a crazy decorated, right? Like fully decked out. They had like multiple kids tables,
Yeah.
full decorations,
Yeah.
right? All sorts of treats and home baked goods and everything.
They-
Goodie
yeah.
bags, June.
They
For-
probably prepped it for at least a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like goodie bags, June,
Yeah.
for like just a casual get together with the kids,
Yeah.
right? They had like a photo area so we could take photos with the
Oh,
kids.
that's next level though.
I mean, it wasn't
Yeah.
like a full blown, they didn't pay someone for a photo booth.
Yeah.
But for me, I was like, holy cow, what is this?
Yeah.
And only now, 2 years later in hindsight, do I realize this is more the norm.
Mm-hmm.
In Korea, when you host,
Mm.
it's a big commitment.
Mm.
And also as guests,
Yeah.
right, you should honor that commitment
Uh-huh.
by like, bringing something and not coming empty-handed.
Yes.
I think the Korean term is binson, right?
Binson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we now know.
Mm.
Although apparently I didn't learn my lesson good enough.
To begin with, Koreans don't usually casually invite you over to your house.
Yeah.
It's only with a certain occasion.
Mm.
One famous occasion would be a 집들이. When you moved into some place.
Housewarming, yeah.
Housewarming. They would ask like, when do you do your 집들이?
Mm-hmm.
And then if they set up a date, you're expected to bring something to their house. And the host is expected to be very well prepared with food and everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I will say in the US, at least housewarming, you should bring something, a small gift.
Yeah.
That at least I would say.
A very common thing that traditionally Koreans bring to your house if you're invited to a 집들이 or toilet paper.
I know this. Yeah.
Or
any
laundry
sort of
detergent.
Oh, that I didn't know. Yeah.
Practicality wise.
House essentials.
Yes.
Okay.
Which one of our friends actually did bring when I invited them over, our acquaintance.
Jun, to my credit.
RS.
To my credit. I did not think of that work team gathering as a 집들이.
It's not, but it was the first though.
It felt like a work function.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know if I exactly thought of it, but I probably said, I don't need to bring anything.
Yeah, you didn't need to bring anything.
No,
though.
but I will say now, every time I go to someone's place, I'm always mindful like, oh, do we have to bring something? Can we come empty-handed? And generally the answer is you should always bring something, even if it's very small. Yeah.
It's just safe to bring something.
No, but sometimes I invite people over. If I know they're American, I will be very clear. Like, hey, American style, like no expectations. We're not going to plan that much, right? And prepare. You guys don't have to bring anything.
Yeah.
But honestly, sometimes they still do. Yeah, I think it's so ingrained in the culture here.
Now that I learned about American house inviting culture, I think it's kind of liberating.
Like, it's very
you don't have
liberating.
to do anything.
Yeah.
The host doesn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
It's very casual.
Very liberating and casual. Yeah. And ultimately, that I think breeds intimacy.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't have to be so formal and presentable or whatever about it.
That's true.
It's like, hey, just come over. I just want to spend time with you.
Yeah.
And could I add one comment about that work function that you hosted? It ended and then everyone left.
Yes.
Right? So for me, my expectation would have been like, oh, we're just going to hang out casually. It's like open-ended, right? Once people start to leave, maybe we can hang out more. But it felt like everyone left exactly like 2 hours after the programming you had planned as the host was completed. And I think that felt very natural to you.
It's natural, but I wouldn't have been surprised if some people just stayed.
Yeah.
And I kind of expected that. But then everyone just like
it
all
did
of a
seem
sudden,
that way, right? Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
I think this is what happens most of the time in house invitations. If someone leaves, some other people who are thinking of leaving just think that's a good timing and say like, oh, I'll leave too.
Yeah.
And then it just creates a mood where everyone leaves.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it makes people awkward if they say
Want to stay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then everyone leaves.
I would say the US is exactly the same up until that last point,
Yeah.
which is if I'm at someone's place and I don't get any nunchi that they want me to leave,
Mhm.
even if everyone else but me is leaving, I'm happy to stay. Like there's
yeah.
no weirdness about
You
that.
should have done that last time. I kind of expected that.
But I feel like in Korean culture, I always get the feeling that, oh, I shouldn't, because it's such a burden on the host.
Yeah.
I don't want to give you more of a burden by staying longer.
Really.
Right? Like you don't have to cater to me, order more food. Maybe you didn't plan anything beyond this.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to make you feel bad as the host. Like, oh, I didn't plan more.
Not really. But it was a lunch thing, right?
Yeah.
So I think a rule of thumb is that if you're invited for lunch, you don't stay up until dinner.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah. Anyways.
But yeah, so anyway, this brings me into inviting into the home. So outside of the very high expectations for a host when you invite people, as well as guests, right? You should bring something. There were some other observations I had in general that it just felt like inviting into the home was a very intimate thing.
Mm.
Even beyond this host guest expectation, it's like revealing my personal life to you, right?
Mm.
And in the home, you can learn so much about someone, right?
Yes.
How they keep their house,
Mm.
right? What kind of furniture they have.
Mm.
You could maybe even see what like medicine they have in the bathrooms, right? It's just very personal.
Exactly.
And I get the feeling that Koreans, it's a bigger deal to invite people in for that reason as well. Is
Mm-hmm.
that true?
I think so. I rarely get invited to other people's homes.
Mm.
Although I think I'm an anomaly. I like to invite people in.
Mm-hmm.
Hence the reason why I got this big table.
No, I mean you're an
Yeah.
exceptional host.
I like to invite people
Yeah.
and just I wanted to play a little bit more casually
Yeah.
and more frequently.
Yeah.
But I do understand in Korean culture in general, inviting someone over to your house is a very big deal.
Yeah.
It's a very intimate thing, as you explained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any reasons come to mind as to why that might be?
I think it's because of the expectations. A
Uh,
lot of burden on the host and also the invitees, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Because you have to be well prepared, so you don't want to do that often.
Yeah.
And you have to bring something also, so you
Yeah.
don't want to do that often. But I don't know what comes first.
Mm.
Yeah.
Did it as a kid growing up, let's say?
Mm-hmm.
For me, my childhood was defined by just going to my friend's house,
Mm.
right? Maybe stay for dinner or whatever. I just
Mm.
did that almost every day during the
Yes.
summers.
Yeah.
Was that common as well?
Yes, but because Korean society have changed so rapidly and
Yeah.
drastically, my personal experience as a kid in the early 90s has very little resemblance of what it is right now.
Today. Yeah. For me, a couple things come to mind where I think living situations are different in Korea.
Mm-hmm.
I think in Korea, there's a lot more multi-generational family, I guess, living arrangements where people are living with their parents up until older. People are living with their grandparents more. And so also the second thing that comes to mind is not only this, but this compounds it. The living space in general is much smaller in Korea.
That's true.
And so these two things, I think, also create an environment where, yeah, the home is just not a comfortable, easy place to invite people over, right?
Yeah.
What are you going to do with your grandma who lives with you, right?
Yeah.
Or your elderly mother, right? When you host people,
Yeah.
well, they're going to be uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
They're going to hide in a room. That's not good for anyone. So
yeah, that combined with the culture where you have to always be presented perfectly.
yeah,
You don't want to show any flaws
yeah,
that you think that are in your house.
yeah.
Mm.
And then there was one final small one, which is I think the sound isolation in Korean apartments is not great.
Oh, that's also a very good observation.
So if you have a lot of people over, first of all, you might have to have like many pairs of house slippers, which you probably don't have. But even if you have those, it's just going to cause a lot of noise for the people beneath you and next to you.
Yes.
And, Koreans are very particular about that. So.
Wow. I've never thought about that. That is very true. That is very true.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm kind of conscious about that too when I invite people over.
Yeah. Especially later at night, right?
Yeah. So far, I didn't have a problem.
Yeah.
Or maybe I have very nice neighbors. Tolerant neighbors.
Or maybe their rage is boiling over and ready to explode at any moment.
But I would tell you there were instances before I lived here. There were some instances where I got a Post-it.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Was it nasty?
No, it was just like passive aggressive.
Nice. So yeah, all this is to say, I think these are the reasons why I think hosting in your home is very rare in Korea. And therefore, I don't think Koreans are necessarily less social. You got to meet somewhere, right? And so to me, this is a big driving force of why cafe culture is so huge in Korea. So
I loved all of your observations and how you led us to cafe culture.
Yeah.
It's something that I think Koreans never really think about that often.
Yeah. They might be surprised in America where, people are inviting us over so much. And like, we don't meet at a neutral third-party cafe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never made the connection, but it's very valid.
I'm literally shocked when I walk around Korea. There's so many cafes, and they're all full.
Yes.
They're all full.
Yeah.
How can there be so many cafes that do identical things that are all popular?
Yeah.
It just tells you, again, how popular cafe culture is.
Yeah.
And not just typical, we should talk about cafes in general, but just the variety of cafes too. Like I even consider like an internet cafe, like a PC bang. That to me is like part of the cafe culture that exists in Korea. I get the sense that PC gaming is huge in Korea, but console gaming never really took off. Nintendo's, PlayStation's, Xbox. In the US, this is like all kids do. They go to each other's homes and they play together. But I suspect maybe that's because of this thing too. I want to hear your thoughts. Like console games are really fun as a group. Like everyone's coming together, playing together, next to each other. But when you're not inviting people over as much, when it's not as common to hang out with other people at their homes, consoles just are not as fun, right? And so people play PC games online with other people a lot more. Yeah, I don't know if that resonates with you, but I just noticed the consoles don't seem to be as popular here as they are in the US.
Interesting. I've never thought of that. One thing that comes to mind that might have played a role in this is if you think about the generation who plays a lot of games are probably like people in their teens or early to mid 30s.
Yeah. I'd say teens and 20s.
A lot of that generation in Korea would live in like small houses, so-called one rooms, studio apartments.
Yeah. If they're not living with their parents, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, one rooms, they won't have TVs in their one rooms.
Yeah.
Or even if they do have it, it's going to be a small TV.
Yeah.
But they always have their computers. So I
Yeah.
think that's maybe why
That makes a lot of
PC
sense.
games took off more than console games.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's just an observation I made, and I think it's linked to this somehow. Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, let's talk about cafes then.
Yeah, there's so many cafes, like you mentioned in Korea. Cafe culture is I think it became a very core culture of Korean social life.
Yeah.
To begin with, I think Koreans really love coffee.
Yeah.
And because the love of coffee, I personally think the quality of coffee has gone up drastically over the years. Even when I go to countries that are more developed, like the US or maybe Japan, I sometimes feel like Korean coffee is better. Why are you laughing? Because I mentioned
You
Japan.
have to mention Japan every episode.
Yeah. Yeah, I genuinely thought that Korean coffee was better than Japan's.
Yeah.
Some people might disagree, but just going into random cafes, right?
Yeah.
That like average quality of coffee is better in Korea, I think.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of people who like to do work or study in cafes. That's another culture.
Yeah, for
There's
sure.
a word for that. 가공족.
What's this?
족 means like tribe. 가공 is short for cafe 공부. Like studying cafe.
Okay. Yeah.
Like you go to Starbucks or any like large scale cafes in Korea, you would see people like on their laptops.
Oh yeah, I do it
like,
myself.
Yeah, on their books just studying.
Yeah.
And for that reason, a lot of cafes intentionally do or do not have outlets.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I love going to some place because they have outlets, and I just work from there for 2 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
I feel like I pay my entrance fee and getting a cafe.
Yeah.
Getting a coffee for like $5, and I stay there for 2 to 4 hours. Yeah.
And it's a very staple culture in Korea where you have a meal together and then go to a cafe for coffee.
Okay, that I want to dig into a bit. So getting coffee after a meal as icha, where, do you have any thoughts around where that came from? Because it used to be like every restaurant had one of those like instant coffee machines when you were exiting, and you can just get a free coffee on your way out. Like even that, where did that come from?
That's very interesting. It's the mixed coffee culture.
Yeah, mixed
right?
coffee. Yeah.
I don't know where it started off. Mixed coffee has for a long time was like a very important part of work culture. At least like you get mixed coffee after a meal.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? I don't know.
Okay. But it's so integrated.
Yeah.
Like when you eat lunch with your coworkers, and we've talked about before, you don't eat alone in Korea. You always eat as a group. You have to get coffee after, it feels like. It's like the meal's not over until you get coffee.
Yeah. I think the mixed coffee culture evolved into going to cafes.
Exactly. Yeah, that's where I was going.
If you get mixed coffee after a meal, it's a very shady or aja thing to do.
Now?
Yeah. Oh, you're getting mixed coffee.
Yeah.
Anyways, and Koreans love Americanos.
Oh, they love iced Americanos in particular.
People coming from the US would be surprised that a lot of cafes don't have brewed coffee. It's all espresso based.
I don't know what that means. Yeah.
Okay,
I'm not deep into coffee culture.
Brewed coffee is the one where you just like you have coffee in the jug.
Yeah.
And espresso is you use an espresso machine.
Oh, that one. Yeah, I get it.
Americano is espresso based, like lattes and all that. It's I think most of the time it's espresso based Americano latte or whatever.
Yeah.
Or some fancy places would have hand drip. We call it pour over coffee. But none of them would have brewed coffee.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Because it's seen as too cheap now, or is the coffee flavor not as good?
It just doesn't exist.
Okay.
I bet a lot of Koreans don't know what brewed coffee is. Like coffee to them is Americano.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. And that's made from espresso machine.
Espresso, yeah.
Yeah. Versus like for me, your classic, I guess everyman coffee is you just go to 7-Eleven, get a cup of coffee. They call it cup of Joe. It's just it's just sitting there waiting for you brewed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only when you go to American franchises would they have brewed coffee in
I
Korea.
see. Yeah.
Like the OPH.
Original Pancake
Yeah,
House.
they had brewed coffee because they're a diner
Oh.
kind of. Yeah.
And they're trying to emulate that American environment.
Maybe.
See,
And
I'm such a coffee noob. Like I didn't even know the difference.
Starbucks has brewed coffee,
Yeah.
but no one gets that. They always get Americano.
Yeah, iced Americano. I was gonna say in the US, I feel like a very popular coffee order is like a cold brew. I think it's known to have like much more caffeine. And again, it's very functional in the US, right? They drink coffee for the caffeine. But yeah, cold brews, I do see them around in Korea, but they're nowhere near as common as the other orders. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Should we go more into unique cafe culture in Korea?
Yeah.
Another unique culture in Korean cafe culture is or this doesn't only apply to cafes, but expands to restaurants, but the 진동벨 culture.
What's that?
Like the ringing bell. Like
Mm.
after you order something at a cafe, sometimes they would give you a little gadget thing to you.
Yeah.
And it'll vibrate and ring when your order is ready.
Yeah. That's totally a thing in the US too.
It is?
Not as ubiquitous as America. Normally they might just yell out your number, right? But actually it's been a while. Definitely at places like food courts, for example.
Oh wow.
They'll give you the 진동벨.
진동벨. Yeah.
But I think in Korea it's like 100% hit rate.
Yeah.
Every cafe is going to give you something like that.
Yeah. Interesting enough, one of the only cafes that don't do that, which is a large franchise cafe, is the most successful cafe in Korea, which is Starbucks.
Oh. Yeah,
they try to maintain the culture, I think, of like friendliness, like
yeah.
calling out your name.
Yeah.
So they don't have a 진동벨. It's very interesting.
There's something on that line too. A lot of cafes, but also restaurants, they have kiosks where you order now.
Oh yeah.
You never talk to a human at these places. Yeah.
I don't like that much. And they expanded to restaurants. They have individual kiosks at your table.
Wow. Yeah, I've seen those too, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And these things are around in the US. You definitely see them, but it's still a novelty. In Korea, I'd say it's the norm. Yeah, either a kiosk to order or at the desk. Sorry, at every table, there's like a small standalone kiosk you can order from. Yeah.
Also, something that I can think of, I don't know if this is a thing in the US, but a lot of cafes have stamps.
Oh, yes.
Stamp
Yeah.
systems. Do you have that in the US?
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Korea's probably, again, a little bit more, there's more of them, and they're a little bit more integrated now.
Yeah.
Where whenever I order from the aforementioned kiosk, I can enter my phone number, and then I'll accrue points that way.
I see.
Yeah. Oh, but here's another fun thing. At like the local cafes too, at least the one I'm thinking of, they'll keep your, these stupid cards where you like get stamps.
Yeah.
They'll keep it there for you.
Yeah.
So you can just look it up there.
Yeah, that's very convenient.
Of course, right?
Yeah.
Like, but in America, you always get one, you get halfway there, you lose track of it, right? Who's going to carry around like a thick group of these things? But yeah, in Korea, the cafes will just keep it there for you.
Also, I think a unique cafe culture in Korea is that you have to bust your own cups and whatnot after you're done drinking.
Yeah, you said this is like a very modern trend.
Yeah, which I hate.
Yeah.
They used to do it for you.
Yeah.
I mean, they won't say anything if you leave it there.
But when everyone else is doing it, you kind of go with the flow.
Yes.
Yeah. I think, again, because Korea is so competitive and there are so many cafes, the different themed cafes now are quite popular, right? They have to differentiate somehow or attract people in some way. So I think that's very interesting.
I think it's a global trend, but cafes should be Instagrammable.
Yes, for sure.
So they very invest a lot in their interior and like how their menus
they're
are
so
presented.
beautiful. Yeah. And also worth mentioning, the cafes here are humongous. Like some of these Starbucks are like 3-story Starbucks, and like it's full.
Yeah.
There's so many people there.
Yeah, it's even bigger if you go to the outskirts of Seoul, right? They have like these mega cafes that are usually called like bakery cafes or whatever.
Yeah.
They have big bakeries integrated with the cafes, so
So my in-laws live in Paju,
Oh yeah, that's like
They're famous for these,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah, these bakeries. I don't call them cafes. Maybe they are.
yeah.
I call them bakeries at this point.
Mm-hmm.
They're humongous. They're beautiful. The food is awesome,
Yes.
right? It's just crazy. They're full. There's so
Mm-hmm.
many people there. Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to add one thing.
Yeah.
The food in cafes,
Yeah.
namely like bakery, most of the time cafes have little things to eat, like cakes or
Yes.
pastry.
Yeah.
And they always have this like fridge thing, right? There where you display the food.
Yeah.
I was always curious. Always on the corner, there are these very colorful bottled drinks like that have like cartoon characters on the
Uh-huh.
pororo or
Yeah,
stuff
the
like that.
potato drinks.
I always thought, who drinks these, or why do cafes always have these?
Yeah.
And only very recently have I realized that it's for the kids.
Oh, of course.
I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
June, as
I
a
didn't even
non-parent.
know what the drink was. Like, why do they always have those weird bottled drinks with
Yeah.
cartoon characters on it?
Yeah.
What do they taste like?
I mean, they're just straight up sugar water. It's
Oh,
juice.
it's
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
juice.
But it's with potato themes and right. It's very popular. Our kids always beg for one. Yeah.
Is it more healthy for
Oh
kids?
no, so bad for you. Yeah.
Then why wouldn't they just order juice from the cafe? Why do they have to have that
The
thing?
potato drink's cheaper.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's cheaper.
And June, do you think a 5-year-old would want this bright, colorful, like neon green, like potato lime drink, or like like a fancy like mango aid?
Interesting.
Yeah, they're just gonna want the fun potato drink.
Did not know that.
Yeah.
That's cafe culture, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's Korean cafe culture.
I guess. Yeah.
Do they have anything equivalent in the US? Like kids drink?
I think so. They have like juice boxes or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Interesting. Yeah.
June, as a non-parent, yeah, your eyes will be open if you ever have kids.
Yeah.
Oh, but this is a great point. I can't believe I forgot about this. Kids cafes, June,
kids cafes
are a revelation. I suspect you've never been in one.
Do you count that as cafes though?
I think it's related to the cafe culture because, again, you can't have your kids going crazy inside the home because, you'll get attacked by your neighbors, right? So where can kids go to go crazy and play? You have to go to a cafe to do it. Yeah. And so kids cafes in Korea, they're amazing. So they're a place where, if you're comfortable as a parent, you can drop off your kids, pay something like, maybe $10 to $12 per hour. And it's just this crazy big indoor place with all these obstacles and activities and ball pits and interactive screens.
Yeah.
And it's just like the kids have so much fun. They're so sweaty after. Parents get a break, right? And the kids can just go crazy and wild. And yeah, it might never work in the US because like kids can do that at home in the US. But in Korea, because so many people live in these apartments with these, rules and expectations, they have to go to a kids cafe to do it. But yeah, these places are amazing. They're for parents a lifeline. And especially if your kids are, let's say, between the ages of like 2 and 7, they're going to have so much fun at kids cafes here. Yeah.
Now that you were expanding out to like alternative cafes,
Yeah.
there are also other things that come to mind. First thing is 카페.
Oh, for books.
Mama
Yeah.
카페.
Yeah.
There are these cafes in Korea where they would have a lot of books and comic books.
Yeah.
And they would have these little pods
Yeah.
that you're designated into.
You can just sit and read, right?
You can sit and lay down, and they serve you food.
Oh, yeah. It's almost like a jjimjilbang, but with like
Oh
a
yeah,
big
definitely kind of like
library.
it's like a jjimjilbang integrated with books.
Books like
Yeah.
like Borders or, oh my God, what's the Barnes and Nobles?
Yeah.
Right? My son loves manhwas, like comic books and graphic novels. So all he wants to do is go to manga cafe basically so he can sit and read comic books. Yeah.
Oh, so you know about book cafes?
We've actually never been to one, but he always is asking us to go. I think he'd love it. Yeah.
And there's another one called board game cafes.
Board game cafes are awesome.
We've been to one a couple of times,
I
right?
love board game cafes. Yeah.
So basically, it's like it sounds. It's a cafe with a lot of board games. And again, you're designated into a certain room, and then you can order drinks and food while playing board games. They have all the most popular board games equipped.
Yeah, board game cafes, June, also revelation. These are amazing.
Yeah.
Right? Of course, the collection and variety, you can get any board game basically that exists. At your table, there's a kiosk that will have interactive or kind of pre-recorded instructions for you to learn the game.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah. It's evolved into that because back in the days, board game cafes, albas, or part-time workers working there were so famous to know all the rules of the games and like without taking a breath,
Yeah,
can
patiently
explain
explain.
everything.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
now they don't have to do that
Yeah.
because they have a little iPad thing.
Board game cafes are amazing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we've talked about PC bangs already, but an interesting one I saw recently,
Mhm.
it's like a indoor pitch and putt. So it's like a golf cafe.
Oh, wow.
And so you can actually sit there, and then once your time comes, you can like pitch and chip indoors.
Mm.
It's awesome. Yeah.
There's also pet cafes where you can bring your dogs.
Oh, you bring your dogs?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought so I've been to a cat cafe where they have cats there you can pet and play with.
So that's the difference between a dog cafe and a cat cafe. Dog cafes where I think you bring your dogs.
I see. Yeah.
And cat cafes is where the cafe has a lot of cats in there
Mm.
and you just interact with the cats while you drink your coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm.
So I think the theme here is anything that you would normally think about doing in the US in your home, right? Because you're free, you have your own space, whatever. If you wanted to do that in Korea, you might have to go to a cafe.
There's a cafe for that.
There's a cafe for that. I think
Yeah.
that has to be the title. But like karaoke rooms, for example. I mean, to be clear, norebangs are famous in the US as well. They exist. But that's because you don't have the machine and like whatever.
Yeah.
But I think they're maybe extra popular in Korea because like, I don't know. Jun, would you feel comfortable like singing at the top of your lungs in the shower in your home?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't do that.
Okay.
But if I wanted to, I would be okay.
Even if you're in like a one room or living with your parents?
No, not at all.
Okay. Then you wouldn't, or you would? You would still be okay?
I wouldn't.
Oh, you wouldn't be okay.
I would be okay in my one room,
Yeah.
but not living with my parents.
Yeah. So see, again, even if you're living, just to put things in perspective, if I'm living with my parents at home, if it's like a single family home, it's a little bigger, we still have our privacy and space.
Yes.
But in Korea, even the biggest apartments, you can hear everyone everywhere at all times, no matter where you're at, right?
Yeah.
So you're never really like separated from people that are living together because the space is so constrained. So.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts on cafe culture and basically the home constraints?
No, I think it was a very interesting connection between the living conditions.
Yeah.
And how cafe culture boomed. I never thought of that, but I think it's very true. I think personally what's very interesting is every time we record the podcast, we meet every Friday.
Yeah.
We eat lunch together, but then we never go to a cafe.
After.
It's just very foreign to me.
Non-Korean.
Non-Korean.
Yeah. But for me, it's not at all.
Yeah.
For me, it's very natural. It's interesting. I will say too, growing up in America as a Korean American, we got invited and went over to other people's homes like a lot, right? So that part totally didn't register to me. But also, we never lived in like a dense apartment, right? We always lived in single family homes. So yeah, it never struck me as, I thought Koreans would love to gather at each other's houses, right? All right, I think that's a good place to end. Jun, next time we have to go to a cafe after we eat lunch.
Yeah. We should do live recording at a cafe.
Oh, it'd be too noisy.
That's true.
All the people, 가공족s. Yeah.
Anyways.
All right. Support us on Patreon. Follow us on Instagram at Korean.American Podcast.
Yeah. And don't forget to watch our videos on YouTube, like and subscribe and comment. Turn on notifications.
All right. We'll catch you next week.
Right. Bye.
Bye.
It's like a common saying that like, oh, I want to quit my job. What are you going to do? Either open a fried chicken place or a cafe. Yeah.
I think you told me like in Korea, the saying is what? All roads lead to
chicken
jeep.